Good morning, everyone. So today we'll be discussing the first uh, passage that we have seen in the test yesterday. So I hope you have all taken the philosophy test. And here's the passage that we're going to look at. So it says maps made by non-Native Americans to depict the Native American land tenure, resources, and see that we are talking about maps that are made by non-native Americans. And what are they trying to show? Depict means show, correct? So what are they trying to show? Native American land tenure. Okay, so we'll look at this meaning of the word tenure, resources, and population distributions appeared almost as early as. So this is a comparison. We can understand that this part is a comparison. Okay, as early as Europeans' first encounters with Native Americans and took many forms. All right, what are these forms? Missionaries' field sketches, explorers' drawings, and surveyors' maps. So here he has given us examples of early maps, or rather sources of early maps. Okay, and as well as maps which were rendered in connection with treaties involving land transfers. So here we have another two new words that we might not know about. Okay, so what I've done is I've put all these words separately so that I can explain you the meaning of each of these words. Okay, and from here, what we'll be looking at is how do we identify a philosophy genre RC and go about with it contextually, even if you're not very clear with the jargon. Okay, so if we see here as well as maps rendered in connection, that means maps made in connection. Somehow we can think, yes, with treaties involving land transfers. That means some kind of rules or regulations, something that people must have agreed upon. Yes, involving land transfers. Most existing maps of Native American lands are reconstructions that are based largely on archaeology. So now we see about maps of today, right? So here we talk about maps of today. All right. So we can see that these are based on archaeology, oral reports, and evidence gathered from observers' accounts in letter, diaries, and official reports. Accordingly, the accuracy of these maps is especially dependent on the map maker's own interpretive abilities. So we can say that maps are dependent on accuracy of interpreter. Okay. So many existing maps also reflect the 150-year-old Bureau of Indian Affairs in administering tribal lands, though these maps incorporate some information gleaned, again, one other new word, gleaned directly from Native Americans. Rarely has Native American cartography contributed to this official record. So basically, some maps are showing us about the Bureau of Indian Affairs, okay, which is administering the tribal lands. But this information is missing, okay, missing info about BIA on tribal lands, okay, on tribal lands from Native American cartography, okay, from Native American cartography. Is that all right? Yes. So thus our current cartographic record relating to Native American tribes and their migrations and cultural features, as well as territoriality and contemporary trust lands, reflects the origins of the data, the mixed purposes for which the maps have been prepared, and changes in both US government policy and non-Native Americans' attitudes towards understanding of Native Americans. So basically here, from here to the last part, is showing what current maps indicate. Right? I hope this part of the passage is clear to you. Now let's go forward with the first question. Okay, before we go forward, yeah, as I told you, we've identified a few words that we might not have known before this. So let's look at these words. First one is tenure. Tenure is the conditions under which something is held or occupied. Okay. In other contexts, if we are talking about jobs, then tenure means time for which you can hold the job. So time for which you can hold the job. Render is provide or give. All right. Treaty is nothing but an agreement between countries. What do we mean by ratified? It's nothing but something that's thoroughly, gone through and concluded. Okay. Gleaned is extracted from various sources. So getting from different sources. Okay. All right. So let's quickly go forward with the first question. The first question asks, which of the following best describes the content of the passage? Okay. Now, option A is a chronology of development of different methods for mapping Native Americans. No, because we're not looking at the time period wise, or we are not looking at a time wise arrangement of Native Americans. Instead, we can see from the last part of the paragraph that our current cartographic record is relating to cultural and migrational features. Okay, so it's definitely not about mapping Native Americans or different methods of mapping Native Americans. This is a partial scope choice which we get only from here. Okay. Now, two, a discussion of how the map making techniques of Native Americans differed from those of Europeans. Again, this also is a partial scope choice. And we remember that the idea that we derived from here is that it was a comparison. Correct? So we are not discussing how exactly they differed. We just saw that they compared between the time, comparison of time to be specific. Yes, they just told that these two things, Native American map making and European map making, were contemporaries. Okay, there's nothing that showed difference between these two. Okay. Now, in fact, we also spoke that, both of these together, they had some kind of first encounters which took many forms. So together they made some kind of different things like missionaries, field sketches, and all of it. Okay. So we can reject this answer as well. An agreement concerning the present day uses to which historical maps of Native American lands are put. Now, the content of the whole thing is not about how in today the old maps are, but it is about how do we understand and why are we trying to understand. Okay, so this whole part of first paragraph tells us about how do we understand Native American maps. And the second paragraph kind of talks about why do we need it and with what accuracy. Okay, so the third one also we can eliminate. The fourth one is an argument concerning the nature of information contained in maps of Native American lands. Yes, this is basically what all is there in maps, which we get from the second part, and why we are doing this map, which also we get from second part, and it is covering how or what are the sources. This how part we can think about in another way, which is what are the sources, which is exactly what we're talking about in this paragraph. So we can look at fourth one as a answer. Last one, he's not proposed that the accuracy needs to improve. He's just commented that the accuracy is not enough because of the sources. That's the argument that they have presented. Okay. All right. So with this, we finished the first question.